Winter in Siberia is not just a season. It is a transformation. The air sharpens. The land stills. And in that silence, something ancient awakens. Snow does not fall here, it takes over. Blanketing forests, rivers, cities and mountains in a purity so vast it feels almost ceremonial. From the jagged peaks of the Altai to the frozen coastline of the Sea of Okhotsk, Siberia becomes a continent of white. No color. No clutter. Just the overwhelming presence of winter itself. And strangely it's beautiful. So if you want more journeys into the unforgiving, the beautiful, and the unknown, subscribe. Hit that button, and join us as we explore the places that don't fit on postcards. It begins with the trees. The endless taiga, the largest forest on Earth, turns silver under ice. Larches and pines wear coats of hoarfrost so thick, they look sculpted from glass. In the right light, the branches shimmer like chandeliers. Sunlight, pale and low, filters through the frost in soft gold hues. And when wind blows through, it's not sound you hear, it's the texture. Then there are the rivers. They freeze from the banks inward, locking in place for months. But the ice isn't dull or opaque, it's clear, almost crystalline. In places like Lake Baikal, the oldest and deepest lake in the world, the surface becomes a solid sheet of blue ice so transparent you can see meters down. Cracks stretch across it like lightning. Air bubbles hang frozen in time. You walk across it and it groans beneath you, not weakly but like a living thing shifting in its ancient sleep. The skies too are part of the landscape. In Siberian winter the sky seems bigger, wider. Sometimes painfully blue, other times covered in thick steel clouds. At night the stars don't twinkle, they pierce. And above the Arctic Circle, the northern lights twist and burn green across the heavens, pulling color into a world that otherwise has none. But perhaps most striking is the silence. Not the absence of noise but the presence of stillness. Siberia in winter doesn't feel abandoned. It feels paused, as if the earth has stopped to listen. Villages lie quiet under snowdrifts, smoke curling gently from chimneys. Reindeer herds move slowly through the white, each step deliberate. Even cities grow quieter as if the cold demands respect. And still, life continues. Not in defiance of the cold but in rhythm with it. People adapt. They wrap themselves in furs, in history, in ritual. Children skate on frozen rivers. Dog sleds cross open tundra. Markets stay open in -40 degrees, the air thick with steam from hot food. Beauty in Siberia is never decorative, it is elemental. Born from extremes. You cannot understand this land by numbers or maps or names. You have to feel it. The crunch of snow underfoot. The sting of air against your skin. The way your breath hangs, suspended, before vanishing into blue. This is Siberia in winter. A place of silence, ice, and impossible grace. A frozen wilderness not meant to be conquered, but simply witnessed. Yakutsk is not supposed to exist. At least not here. Not this far north. Not this deep in the cold. And certainly not with nearly 300,000 people calling it home. But it does. Tucked into the heart of the Sakha Republic, also known as Yakutia, Yakutsk is the coldest major city on Earth. In winter, the mercury plunges to -50, sometimes -60 degrees Celsius. That's not just cold, it's a different category of existence. At those temperatures, cold doesn't bite. It crushes. It seeps into your bones. Exposed skin freezes in minutes. Eyelashes stiffen with frost. Cars are never shut off. Pipes are raised above ground because the soil beneath is locked in permafrost, permanently frozen 12 months a year. And yet, somehow life not only continues here, thrives. Yakutsk feels like an outpost on another planet. Fog clings to the streets for most of the winter, dense, eerie, and unshakable. It's not pollution. It's the air itself condensing from the extreme cold. In the depths of December and January, the sun barely scrapes above the horizon. Days are little more than prolonged twilights, casting a strange, subdued glow over the city. From above, Yakutsk looks like a collision of centuries. Concrete Soviet-era apartment blocks stand beside newer glass towers. Wooden houses, some over a century old, cling stubbornly to their plots. The streets are lined with stilted buildings, lifted above the ground not for aesthetics but survival. Heat from the foundations would melt the permafrost, causing buildings to shift, crack, and collapse. So everything is raised. Everything is built with one eye on the ice beneath. Inside though? Warmth. Homes and buildings are sealed tight, filled with heavy drapes, thick rugs, and a relentless supply of central heating. Stores stay stocked. Schools remain open even at -45. People go to work. They meet friends. They laugh. Life somehow continues. And what makes it all possible? Adaptation, culture, pride. The people of Yakutsk don't just endure winter. They wear it like armor. Thick fur coats, some passed down through generations, insulated boots and layers of wool. Clothing here is survival gear. Every step outside is a calculation. Phones must be kept inside your jacket to prevent the batteries from freezing. Cars are plugged into heaters overnight or run constantly. Water trucks deliver to areas without central plumbing, because underground pipes are useless here. But Yakutsk is more than a city of survival. It's a cultural capital. The Saka people, indigenous to this land, have lived here for centuries. Their language, their traditions, their relationship with the cold, it's all still alive. The annual Isiaq festival, held in summer, celebrates renewal, sunlight, and endurance. In winter, music and art don't stop. Museums, theaters, and even film studios remain active. Yakutsk is a contradiction. Brutally cold, yet filled with life. Remote, yet connected to a global world. Built on ice, yet burning with human warmth. Is not supposed to exist. And that's exactly why it does. Lake Baikal is not just a lake. It is the oldest, the deepest, and the most mysterious body of freshwater on Earth. Tucked away in the southern heart of Siberia, Baikal is more ocean than lake. Massive, cold, and alive in a way few places are. It stretches over 600 kilometers from north to south, shaped like a crooked crescent, framed by mountains that seem to rise straight out of the water. Beneath its surface lies a secret world, older than humanity itself. Formed over 25 million years ago, Baikal is a crack in the Earth's crust. A rift that keeps widening year by year. One day, millions of years from now, it may split a continent. But for now it holds water. A fifth of the world's unfrozen fresh water, locked beneath its surface. In winter, Lake Baikal transforms. The waves still, the surface freezes, and something otherworldly appears. But not like anywhere else. The ice on Baikal is a kind of magic. It freezes so clear you can see all the way down, meters deep. Trapped air bubbles shimmer in long vertical lines. Fish dart beneath your feet. The cracks stretch for kilometers like lightning frozen mid-strike. And when the ice groans, it doesn't whisper, it sings. Deep, echoing, alien. A living sound as if the earth itself were shifting in its sleep. Locals drive across it, race across it, camp on it. Photographers come from around the world just to capture it, those blue-green slabs jutting from the surface like crystal blades. Some parts of the lake freeze with swirling patterns that look like smoke trapped under glass. Others form pressure ridges, towering shards of ice pushed together by the slow expansion of frozen water. But the beauty of Baikal is not just visual, it's ecological. Baikal is a biodiversity island. Over 3,500 species live here, and two-thirds exist nowhere else. The Baikal seal, Nerpa, is the only freshwater seal on Earth. Tiny translucent fish called Gallomyanca swim through the depths, and microscopic crustaceans purify the water, making it some of the clearest in the world. In spring the ice breaks. It doesn't melt quietly, it cracks and shatters in long, thunderous reports that echo across the valley. Shards pile along the shore in glittering heaps. The lake wakes up, the water moves, and the rhythm of life begins again. But even then it never loses its edge. Baikal is cold even in summer. Storms can rise out of nowhere, whipping the lake into waves that crash like ocean surf. The locals say the lake has moods, and you don't challenge them. And maybe that's what makes Baikal unforgettable. It is not gentle. It is not easy. It is Siberia distilled into water and ice. Ancient, immense, alive. A sacred place, revered by locals, feared by travelers, and respected by all who pass its shores. You don't visit Baikal. You witness it. The Altai Mountains are where Siberia breathes. A jagged spine of rock, ice, and forest that rises where Russia meets Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and China. This is no borderland, it's a sanctuary. A place of rivers born in glaciers. Of snow-covered peaks mirrored in still alpine lakes. A place where time moves differently, slower, heavier, older. The name Altai comes from the Mongolic word for golden. And when the sun hits these mountains in winter, you understand why. Light spills over ridgelines, pouring across frozen valleys, catching on frost-covered trees. Snow turns gold. Ice glows. And for a few brief hours each day, the mountains seem to burn beneath the cold. But this is no gentle landscape. The Altai are wild, untouched, unforgiving. This is where Siberian tigers once roamed. Where brown bears and lynx still stalk the forests. Where eagles glide over wind-blasted cliffs, and reindeer herds move quietly through the trees. In the heart of winter, temperatures plunge below -40 degrees Celsius, and yet the silence is never empty. Wolves howl. As cracks. Wind speaks in long, low sighs through the valleys. The beauty of the Altai is not just in what you see, but what you feel. The air is thin and sharp. Rivers like the Katun and the Chuya wind through steep gorges, half-frozen, edged in hoarfrost. Hot springs bubble near ice fields, steaming into the frigid sky. Lakes like Teletskoy lie frozen, wrapped in forests of larch and pine, their shores dotted with wooden villages, smoke curling from chimneys into the still air. To live here is to know the land, not control it. The indigenous Altai people have lived in harmony with these mountains for centuries. Semi-nomadic herders who move with the seasons, guided by ancestral rhythms. They believe the mountains are sacred. That spirits live in the rivers, in the stones, in the peaks. These aren't stories, they're survival. Deep respect, not romanticism. Their traditions endure. Throat singing. Shamanic rituals. Felt yurts set against a background of absolute wilderness. In the Altai, ancient and modern exist side by side. Cell towers and horse-drawn sleds, motorbikes and reindeer. And here's the truth, few places on Earth are more remote than this. Roads twist along cliff edges, vanish under snow and reappear miles later. Entire valleys lie untouched through the winter, hidden under meters of snow. There are places in the Altai where no electricity reaches, no signals ping, and no footprints break the surface of the snow for months at a time. But isolation here doesn't mean desolation. It means peace. It means purity. It means a kind of silence that's almost impossible to find anywhere else on Earth. The Altai Mountains are not just beautiful. They are sacred, brutal, mesmerizing. A place where Siberia reveals its soul, not through cities or statistics, but through stone, snow, and sky. You don't conquer the Altai. You enter with humility. And if you're lucky, you leave with something more than photographs. You leave with reverence. Kamchatka is where the earth still boils. A land of fire and ice at the far eastern edge of Russia, unreachable by roads, surrounded by oceans and sealed off by mountains that rise like fortresses from the sea. It's not just remote, it's mythic. A place where volcanoes smoke in the dead of winter, where geysers hiss through snow, and where brown bears outnumber people in some valleys. Kamchatka is Siberia unchained. From above, the peninsula stretches like a claw into the Pacific. More than 300 volcanoes rise across its spine, 29 of them still active. They don't sleep. They erupt. Regularly. Ash clouds drift across glaciers. Lava cuts through frozen ground. Snow and fire collide in a way that shouldn't make sense, and yet somehow here it does. The land itself is alive. Breathing. Growling. In winter the landscape turns stark and otherworldly. Snow covers the calderas, smooth and perfect, until a vent releases steam and carves a hole straight through the white. On the slopes of Klyachevskaya Sopka, the tallest active volcano in Eurasia, molten lava sometimes glows through the snow at night. A contradiction. A warning. A spectacle. But Kamchatka isn't just volcanoes. It's wild rivers, steaming hot springs, black sand beaches, and tundra that stretches into oblivion. And in the heart of it all, the Valley of Geysers. One of the largest geyser fields in the world, where thermal pools bubble beside ice-covered cliffs, and plumes of steam rise from the snow like ghosts in the mist. Here nothing is still. And nothing is tame. The peninsula is home to one of the densest brown bear populations on Earth. They fish for salmon in half-frozen rivers, digging through snowbanks, their fur caked with ice and mud. They are not zoo animals. They are massive, unpredictable, and everywhere. In Kamchatka, humans are the guests. Reindeer herders still move across the tundra. Indigenous Koryak and Idleman people still pass down their stories of fire spirits and gods beneath the mountains. Their ancestors lived with the volcanoes, not against them. Built homes near hot springs. Watched the skies. Trusted the land even when it shook. And yet, Kamchatka remains largely untouched. Fewer than 300,000 people live on the entire peninsula. No highways connect it to mainland Russia. Most villages can only be reached by air or boat. In winter, even those can vanish beneath blizzards for days. For many, helicopters are more common than cars. This isolation protects the land. Keeps it raw. Keeps it real. Kamchatka is not for comfort seekers. It's not polished or packaged. It's elemental. To travel here is to stand on the skin of the earth and feel what lies beneath. Is to wake up and see a volcano outside your window. To bathe in a hot spring while snow falls around you. To understand that the planet is still alive, still dangerous, still breathtaking. You don't visit Kamchatka to escape the world. You go to remember what the world really is. Wild, violent, beautiful beyond belief. Novosibirsk is the capital of Siberia's modern face. It has no smoking volcanoes, no glacial lakes, no ancient mountain spirits. What it has instead is people, millions of them. Concrete, steel, science, industry. A city not built to awe the landscape but to survive it. And somehow, in the middle of endless steppe, in the heart of one of the coldest regions on Earth, it thrives. This is Russia's third largest city, bigger than most national capitals. And yet, outside of Russia, few have even heard its name. But Novosibirsk doesn't care. It wasn't built for fame. It was built for function. Born from a bridge, nothing more. In 1893, engineers crossed the Ob River with the Trans-Siberian Railway, and a small settlement grew around it. The idea was simple: connect Moscow to Vladivostok. Bind the empire together with steel. Novosibirsk was the anchor point in the middle of nowhere. A logistical node. A dot on the map. And then, it exploded. By the time the Bolsheviks took power, the dot had become a city. By the Second World War, it was a fortress of industry. When German armies pushed toward Moscow and Leningrad, entire factories were ripped from their foundations and hauled east by rail, piece by piece, and reassembled in Novosibirsk. Along with the machines came scientists, engineers, workers, families. By the end of the war, this cold outpost had become one of the USSR's most critical hubs. And it never stopped growing. Today, Novosibirsk stands as Siberia's intellectual and industrial engine. Its skyline is a mix of brutalist towers, Soviet-era blocks, and sleek new glass rising along the Ob River. Trams roll past Lenin statues. Shopping malls sit beside weather-worn apartment blocks. Snow piles on rooftops while tech startups hum inside. But perhaps its greatest symbol isn't in the city center. It's in the forest. Academic town. Built in the 1950s, it was the Soviet dream of a scientific utopia. Dozens of research institutes hidden among the pines. Nuclear physics, mathematics, biology, cybernetics. An entire city of scientists sealed off from the world, given freedom and funding and a mission. Push the boundaries of knowledge. And they did. Even today, Akademgorodok remains one of the most respected research hubs in Russia. Surrounded by snow, far from the politics of Moscow, science continues in silence. But Novosibirsk is not just laboratories and smokestacks. It's culture. It's art. The Novosibirsk Opera and Ballet Theater, the largest in Russia, is a cathedral of performance, bigger even than the Bolshoi in Moscow. Its grand dome looms over Lenin Square, hosting world-class shows in a city where the average winter day dips below -20 degrees Celsius. And yet people live. People love. Cafes stay open. Streets stay lit. Life moves even through the snow. Novosibirsk doesn't offer spectacle. It offers something tougher, permanence. A city built not to impress but to endure, to function, to lead. It is Siberia's pulse, beating steadily beneath the frost. Krasnoyarsk Stalby is where wilderness rises straight out of stone. Just outside the industrial sprawl of Krasnoyarsk, one of Siberia's largest cities, there is a place where the earth seems to remember what it once was. Wild, towering, untouched. A nature reserve carved out of taiga and granite, where forests stretch to the horizon and ancient rocks erupt skyward like the broken bones of giants. This is Stalby, the Pillars. Massive stone formations that pierce the sky, some over 100 meters tall, worn smooth by centuries of wind, snow, and sun. Some stand like frozen waves, others like weathered towers. No fences, no handrails. Just rock, forest, and open sky. Nature raw and vertical. In winter, the whole reserve transforms into something mythic. Pines and larches disappear under snow, their branches drooping like white curtains. Animal tracks crisscross the silence: foxes, martens, deer. A hush settles over everything, broken only by the crunch of boots on ice or the whisper of wind over the cliffs. And there, rising out of the snow like monuments, the Stalby Pillars. Covered in frost. Iced over. Impossibly beautiful. But this isn't a place to observe from afar. This is Siberia. You climb. For over a century, local climbers called stolbists have made it a tradition to scramble up these formations with no ropes, no equipment, just muscle, instinct, and nerve. It's not a sport here. It's a way of life. Generations have tested themselves against the stone year-round, even in the dead of winter when the rock is slick with ice and the air burns your lungs. It's part of the spirit of the place. You don't come to Stalby to be entertained. You come to remember what it means to move, to climb, to confront something larger than yourself. But Stalby isn't just for climbers. It's a sanctuary. Protected since 1925, it's one of the oldest nature reserves in Russia. A haven of biodiversity tucked beside a major city. Lynx roam here. Owls perch silently in the trees. Rare plants survive in hidden crevices where the wind can't reach. Even when the cold sinks below -30 degrees Celsius, life continues under the snow. There are no roads into Stalby. To reach it, you walk 5-6 kilometers through forest trails, up steep inclines and frozen paths. There are no shortcuts. No cars. That's the point. The journey into Stalby is a cleansing of sorts. You leave behind the smoke of the city and trade it for pine needles, clean air, and ancient stone. And when you reach the top, when you stand on one of those silent granite peaks above the forest beneath the winter sky, you understand something. Siberia is not just cold. It's not just vast. It's vertical, eternal, alive. Stalby is a reminder that even near the edge of civilization, even in the deep freeze of winter, beauty can still rise from the earth and reach for the sky. The Lena pillars are not built, they are revealed. Rising along the icy banks of the Lena River in Russia's far east, these towering stone formations look like the ruins of an ancient cathedral. Spires of rock, weathered by 500 million years of wind, ice and water. Jagged, serrated, massive. As if nature herself sculpted monuments and then left them to be forgotten in the cold. This is one of Siberia's most surreal landscapes. A wall of limestone and dolomite stretching for miles along the river, with some cliffs reaching over 300 meters high. In summer they reflect in the water like ghosts. In winter they loom silently over a frozen world, snow clinging to every ledge, icicles hanging like daggers, and the Lena River frozen solid beneath them. There is no road that leads easily here. No luxury lodges. No grand entrances. To reach the Lena pillars, you cross hundreds of kilometers of taiga and tundra. In winter, sometimes only by snowmobile or frozen river path. In summer, by boat. And once you arrive, what you see doesn't seem real. Stone fingers rise straight from the forest. Dozens. Hundreds. A jagged skyline of rock surrounded by nothing but wilderness. And silence. The only sounds are the groan of the river ice, the wind rushing through the pillars and the crunch of snow underfoot. These cliffs are more than beautiful, they are ancient. Formed in the Cambrian period, long before dinosaurs, long before trees. The rocks here hold some of the earliest traces of life on Earth. Fossils embedded deep in their layers, silent witnesses to 500 million years of history. The indigenous Yakut people have long considered the pillars sacred. A place of power. Of memory. Of spirits. They gave them names. They told stories about them. They believed the rocks were once living things, turned to stone by the breath of the gods. And when you see them, especially in the pale light of a Siberian winter, you believe it too. The Lena pillars are not just geological formations. They are symbols. Of endurance. Of permanence. Of Siberia's quiet, unshakable power. In a world where so much changes, where so much is temporary, the Lena pillars remain. Season after season, century after century they stand. Covered in snow. Surrounded by ice. Wrapped in silence. They are not a tourist attraction. They are not meant to entertain. They don't move. They don't speak. But they leave you speechless. You come to the Lena pillars not to be amazed, but to be humbled. Because here, on the edge of the known world, deep in the cold heart of Siberia, nature doesn't perform. It remembers, and it endures. The Putarana Plateau is where the map ends and the wilderness begins. A massive basalt fortress tucked deep within northern Siberia, above the Arctic Circle, unreachable by road, untouched by cities and unknown even to many Russians. It's not just remote, it's isolated in the purest sense. A labyrinth of mountains, cliffs, lakes and canyons that stretch for thousands of kilometers, carved by ancient lava flows and hardened by 10,000 winters. You don't stumble into the Putarana Plateau. You seek it out. And when you find it, you realize, it was never meant to be found. This is one of the most inaccessible places on Earth. No roads. No villages. No signs. To get here you fly, usually by helicopter, over a sea of forest, tundra and ice. Then you land on a plateau that looks more like another planet than part of Russia. Flat-topped mountains rise like black islands out of a white ocean of snow. Waterfalls, hundreds of them, cut through frozen cliffs. Rivers snake between deep canyons, hidden beneath thick layers of ice. In winter the silence is total. Snow blankets the land. Temperatures plunge to -40 degrees Celsius and lower. Lakes freeze solid. Winds carve the drifts into strange, beautiful shapes. Ice hangs in midair, suspended on rock ledges and tree branches like frozen breath. And yet, even here life endures. The plateau is part of the largest protected wilderness in Russia, Putaransky Nature Reserve, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Home to reindeer herds, Arctic foxes, snow owls and even the elusive wolverine. In summer, it bursts with life, mosses, lichen, wildflowers. In winter, it tightens into survival mode. Every living thing here is a specialist. Every movement is measured. And towering above it all, walls of basalt stacked like books on a shelf. Dark, vertical, commanding. These were formed 250 million years ago, in one of the largest volcanic events in Earth's history. The Siberian Traps. The lava didn't just erupt, it flooded, covering millions of square kilometers. The Putarana Plateau is one of the last untouched remnants of that ancient chaos. A fossilized explosion locked in stone. But the real magic? The water. In summer, this plateau is home to some of the tallest waterfalls in Russia. Dozens of them, some over 100 meters high. Water spills from cliffs into deep, icy canyons. But in winter, the waterfalls freeze mid-fall, glittering blue towers of ice suspended in silence. This is not the Siberia of cities or people. There is no Yakutsk here. No Novosibirsk. No footprints. Just endless wilderness. The Putarana Plateau is a place without compromise. It doesn't care if you're impressed. It doesn't care if you're afraid. It exists on its own terms, wild, frozen, and silent. You come here and you realize, this is what the world looked like before us. And maybe, what it will look like long after. The Yamal Peninsula is the edge of everything. A frozen finger of land thrust deep into the Arctic Ocean, far above the treeline, where the world flattens into endless tundra and the horizon never ends. In the language of the Nenets people who have lived here for thousands of years, Yamal means end of the land. And it feels exactly like that. No forests, no roads, no cities. Just permafrost, biting winds and skies so vast they feel like oceans. The ground here is frozen solid for most of the year, deep, ancient frost that holds the past locked beneath the surface. But even here life persists. Not in defiance of the cold, but in harmony with it. The Yamal Peninsula is home to one of the last great nomadic cultures on Earth, the Nenets reindeer herders. Every year, they move with the seasons, guiding massive herds of reindeer across hundreds of kilometers of frozen land. Their tents, called chums, go up and down with the rhythm of the migration. Their lives follow the herds, the ice and the stars. And in winter that life is nothing short of brutal. Temperatures drop below -50 degrees Celsius. Winds howl across the tundra without end. Snow drifts pile higher than a man. There is no shelter from the cold, only clothing, fire, and instinct. And still the Nenets endure. Generations of knowledge passed down in silence. They read the snow. They know the winds. They teach their children not to fight the cold, but to understand it. To outsiders it looks like survival. To them it's just life. But Yamal is not just tradition. It's also power. Beneath the tundra lie some of the largest natural gas reserves on Earth. This peninsula fuels much of modern Russia. The gas is pumped through pipelines that stretch across the ice, through the wilderness toward Europe and Asia. Massive industrial projects, entire cities of steel and flame, rise from the permafrost, their lights glowing in the polar night. It's a strange contrast. On one side, ancient herders in fur clothing guiding reindeer through blizzards. On the other, liquefied natural gas terminals and flame stacks reaching into the sky. Old world and new, frozen together on the same land. And still the tundra remains. Endless, merciless, beautiful. In summer, Yamal is transformed, briefly. The snow melts, the rivers run, and the ground becomes a patchwork of moss, bogs, and biting insects. Herds move faster. The Arctic sun never sets. For weeks, the sky glows with a strange, endless twilight. But soon the cold returns. It always does. Yamal is a place of cycles. Of movement, of memory, of survival. It is not easy. It is not soft. It does not welcome you. But it teaches that even at the very edge of the earth, where the land ends and the ice begins, people still live, still move, still endure. Not as relics but as proof that life in its purest form needs nothing but will. Irkutsk is where Siberia begins to speak. Not with wind or ice, but with stories. Stories carried by trains, frozen into architecture, whispered through narrow streets wrapped in snow. Once called the Paris of Siberia, Irkutsk is a city of contradiction, elegant but rugged, European in style but entirely Siberian in soul. A city shaped not just by cold but by exile, ambition, and the slow, relentless pulse of steel rails crossing the continent. This is one of the oldest and most important cities in eastern Russia. Founded in the 1600s as a Cossack outpost, it grew from a trading post on the Angara River into a place of exile for nobles, revolutionaries, and thinkers who challenged the Tsars. It was never meant to be glamorous. And yet, it is. Walk the streets in winter and you'll see it. Snow falling softly on ornate wooden houses with carved lace-like trim. Grand stone facades standing against the frost. A frozen river winding through the city like a ribbon of light. It's cold, yes, but never lifeless. Irkutsk has character. And for those crossing the vast emptiness of Russia by rail, this is where everything changes. Because Irkutsk is the gateway to Lake Baikal. But more than that, it is one of the great waypoints of the Trans-Siberian Railway, the longest railway line in the world. Stretching over 9,000 kilometers from Moscow to Vladivostok, the Trans-Siberian is not just a rail line. It's a thread that stitches together two continents. A line that moves through time zones, languages, landscapes, and histories. And Irkutsk is one of its jewels. For travelers, this is where the forest thickens, the snow deepens, and the real Siberia begins. Trains slow as they approach the lake, curving along the southern shore of Baikal, hugging the cliffs, gliding past frozen waves and silent valleys. Sometimes the lake vanishes into fog. Other times, it explodes into view, blue, white, and endless. On board, life moves to a slower rhythm. Samovars hiss with hot water. Tea is poured into glasses with metal holders. Conversations drift between strangers in cramped cabins. Outside, the window becomes a moving canvas. Taiga, rivers, frozen fields, all sliding by in silence. This is the romance of the Trans-Siberian. Not in speed but in scale. Irkutsk knows that rhythm. It has lived by it for over a century. Goods flow through. Tourists stop over. Locals board for short rides and long migrations. The city itself feels like a station between eras, Siberian and European, ancient and modern, proud and weathered. But no matter how far the train goes, how deep the cold becomes, Irkutsk stays fixed in the memory. It is not the end. It is not the beginning. It is the pause in between. Where steam rises from street vents. Where the past lingers in the woodwork. Where the train stops, and Siberia finally begins to speak with a human voice. Siberia is not what you think it is. It is not just ice. Not just exile. Not just empty space on a map. It is movement. It is memory. It is life, carved into permafrost, whispered through the pines, and written across landscapes that seem too vast, too cold, too wild to be real. But they are real. And people live here. Always have. From the ghostly spires of the Lena Pillars to the lava-born cliffs of the Puturana Plateau, from the steaming heart of Kamchatka's volcanoes to the wind-blown tundra of the Yamal Peninsula, this land tells 1,000 stories and all of them are about endurance. Not survival. Endurance. Because Siberia doesn't offer mercy. It offers clarity. The kind you only find when everything else is stripped away, comfort, convenience, noise. And what's left is just the cold, the land, and you. Every place we've seen is a reminder. Beauty does not need to be soft. It can be sharp. It can be silent. It can be utterly indifferent to your presence. And yet, that's what makes it matter. In Yakutsk, families raise children on streets so cold your breath turns to fog before it leaves your lungs. In Oymyakon, school doesn't stop unless the temperature drops below -52. In the Altai Mountains, reindeer herders move quietly across snow that hasn't been touched in weeks. In Novosibirsk, scientists and students carry on their lives in a city built on frozen soil, powered by intellect and iron. They don't just live here. They belong here. They understand something the rest of the world has forgotten, that the earth is still vast, still raw, still beyond us in places. And that's not something to fear. It's something to respect. The Trans-Siberian Railway winds through all of this, a single steel thread that ties it together. A connection across a continent. A reminder that even here, in the most remote corners of the world, humanity finds a way to move forward. Slowly, steadily, without spectacle. But there are no shortcuts in Siberia. No quick ways in or out. If you come here, you earn every step. And in doing so, you begin to understand what this place really is. Not the end of the world. But its still beating heart. A place where stone remembers the beginning of time. Where rivers run beneath ice older than nations. Where cultures that should have vanished centuries ago still walk across the snow, singing old songs, guiding animals, watching the sky. Siberia doesn't try to impress you. It doesn't need to. It simply exists. Massive. Unshaken. Unapologetic. And once you've seen it, not just the cold but the life inside the cold, something shifts. You carry it with you. A silence. A weight. A kind of awe that doesn't shout but stays with you, long after the snow has melted from your boots. Because in the end, Siberia doesn't change for anyone. But if you let it, it will change you.